Okay, guys, thank you so much for coming today, for spending time with me. You can just hit mute there if you haven't muted yourself on your bottom left-hand side of your screen. Let's see if everyone's muted. Yeah, so it's lovely to see you all. I don't have notes for today's class, which is on sleep, how to sleep better, sleep hacks, natural hacks for sleep. So you can just take some notes whilst I'm talking. I wanted to make a presentation, but I ran out of time. So I want to be finished by 4 so that we all can carry on and do fun things, get outside and have some fresh air. So I have really spoken to a lot of people in the last sort of 2 to 3 months specifically who are struggling with sleeping. And I think, you know, this is something that we all have times in our lives where we struggle to sleep, or we struggle to fall asleep, or to stay asleep, or to go back to sleep if we wake up. Men and women, different phases of your life, etc. But I think it's been particularly bad considering the fact that we have been in this bizarre time in history where I think a lot of our security has felt taken away or not there. So I wanted to just do a talk about that. I myself actually grew up as quite an insomniac. So when I was a child, I remember lying there for hours and hours trying to get to sleep, and my dad having to come 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times. And I remember it so clearly because he used to do this funny thing. We used to run in the room like an aeroplane, and he used to do circles round and round the room, and then he'd give me a kiss. My mom never came because I think she was broken and exhausted by that time. But yeah, and I obsessively would go to the loo. I would try and go to the loos to make sure that I had done my wee and I wouldn't wake up in the night. I don't know what it was, but I remember going to the loo again and again and again and struggling to fall asleep. And yeah, so I think, and I certainly, as I grew up, I remember going on school camps and that type of thing and really struggling to fall asleep when there were other people in the room and hearing them breathe. So when I came to sort of a more healthy lifestyle, it certainly helped. When I got more involved with essential oils and started to use some of the oils that were specifically good for sleep, that helped massively. And then I started to use the oils with my husband, and he's a complete convert and he just loves them as well. So I think that there's a lot of space for actually sharing oils with we don't have, I think Ben's the only guy on today. Yeah, and Benjamin's my oldest son, for those of you who haven't met him. He also struggles with sleep, so I said he must come and listen to what I have to say. So whilst I prepared for today's talk, I interviewed some psychiatrists, athletes, yogis. I looked at some of the research from the Mayo Clinic and Harvard Medical. I spoke to some birth workers, and based on some of their recommendations or things that they said, some of my own input, I'll talk about just some basic ideas of how to sleep better, and then at the end I'll get to the essential oils, which is really the arrow that hits the target. Okay. So sleep is directly linked to your immune system, your health, the ability to lose weight, to reset your body, to rest, to be healthy. I think for those of us, I certainly fall into that category. I'm 47, where you sort of in your midlife type of or perimenopausal sort of phase of your life, or even if you're starting your hormonal journey, you can have weight fluctuations and mood fluctuations that are affected by your hormones, and sleep really affects that as well. So if you're not sleeping well, those things are going to be even more out of balance, which is difficult. So sleep is just a great natural equalizer of bringing your body back into balance. When I was speaking to the psychiatrist about just our current situation with the virus, and he was saying, you know, I think for many generations now, probably 2 generations, 2 or 3, really since the wars, we've lived with this illusion that we're safe, everything's predictable, which is not really true, but I think we try and create a world where we think that we feel safe and everything's under our control. And then I think with the current situation with the virus, I think that has made it particularly bad, where you feel like in a deep-seated way that you have things that are out of control and you're feeling emotional, but almost not sure why. And often that comes out with the inability to fall asleep. He said from his perspective, he thought, just merely accepting the fact that you have those feelings, and identifying the feeling that you have itself is so powerful and can often take those feelings away or certainly lessen them. So that made me think of the emotional freedom technique. I don't know if any of you have practiced EFT, which is tapping. I learned it from a lady who's a good friend of mine. She's a missionary worker in America. She was also a homeschooler. And essentially what you do is you start by, you tap in different parts of your body, which is to stop your brain from being in the fight, flight, and freeze part of the brain and bring your thoughts to your frontal cortex. But essentially what you're doing is you're saying, I accept myself. This is the issue. Like it would be, the issue is my child put a dirty spoon in her mouth from the shop the other day, and I feel nervous that she's going to get sick. So you would say what your fear is or what the thing is that you're feeling. And then you would start to say, but maybe her immune system's strong, and maybe she's going to be okay. So you almost give your brain a different thought that attaches to the fear, which is a good thought. And whether you want to do EFT or not do EFT, I have done that with somebody before where they were struggling and they had a book on their kitchen counter. And for every fear or anxious thought she had on the left-hand side of the page, she had to, straight after she wrote it, on the right-hand side of the page, write something positive. So it directly related to that thought. I fear that my small baby won't sleep tonight, but maybe the baby will sleep after a nice walk outside, or something like that. So it's just a powerful way of retraining the thoughts in our brain and attaching positive thoughts to negative thoughts. So that was something that I thought of. Anyway, that was just an aside. The first sleep hack is bright light exposure. This was quite amazing for me when I actually read the studies on it. So the studies show that 2 hours of bright light exposure increases sleep by 2 hours in terms of amount and sleep efficiency by 80%. So it's quite interesting. I thought to myself, I definitely have a lot of outdoor time. I love to surf. I love to walk with the kids. I walk the dog. But I don't know if I get 2 hours, certainly in the winter when it's colder. I'm not sure if I get 2 hours of outside time, direct light exposure. So no sunglasses on, no hat. You want those light rays to go into your eyes. Obviously, on the one side, you're getting vitamin D, which is very good for your immune system, but your eyes actually have photosensitive cells in the retina, and those are directly linked to the pituitary gland. And that, actually, I was reading here, I just wrote it down, the British Journal of Ophthalmology said that the photoreceptors were vital to the whole body's health processes, and directly affected the hypothalamus, which controls your biological clock. And your biological clock is essentially the thing that says, yes, I must go to sleep now, or yes, I must have enough energy to be awake now. It also regulates the nervous system, and the hormonal system, both of which are affected by and affect sleep. Okay, so so I thought that's quite interesting, because I know I've spoken to people before where they said, there's this great thing where sunglasses were created and everybody walks around with sunglasses on and drives with sunglasses on, but actually I remember the first person I heard speaking about that was Mary Ann Shearer. I don't know if any of you remember her. She was one of the great forerunners of the sort of vegan movement in South Africa. And I remember her saying, you need to create vitamin A in your body, you need light to be going through your eyes and to the retina of your eyes to create vitamin A. I was amazed by that 2 hour thing. And I think it really made me think about, especially my children, that certainly if we're at home, or if you're working, or you're sitting studying, you probably, unless you, let's say you did half an hour during break, and then you've really got to carve out the time to have time outside to have direct light exposure. It doesn't mean that you have to be in direct sunlight. It doesn't mean that you have to be in the sun in the middle of the day, but it means that you have to be outside in the direct sun, in the direct light, which is really interesting. Yeah, so in one of the medical trials, they took a bunch of insomniacs, they were adults, and having exposed them to bright light every day, they found that they were 83% improvement in the time that it took them to fall asleep. So I think of my husband, who sits behind a desk and works every day, and I was like, he struggles to fall asleep, and we use the oils with him and they help a lot. But I really am now quite committed to making sure he can carve out time to actually spend time outside every day, which will help him. Obviously, that piggybacks, because the benefit of spending time outside is typically the easiest way, and certainly in winter, is to do some exercise. You can walk the dog, you can walk the kids, you can walk yourself, you can go and shop for the granny next door. But the exercise, obviously, we're going to talk about that just now. That's another part that's helpful. So yeah, one of the athletes that I spoke to was saying that, there's research that shows if you're sedentary for more than 6 hours a day, and when you look up what sedentary means, it means seated. So if you're in a seated position for 6 hours or more a day, it's really not going to benefit your sleep. You will not sleep as effectively, and that's in falling asleep and having effective, good, deep sleep, deep rest, so that you feel, everybody knows that feeling when you've had a good night's sleep and you wake up and you feel like $1,000,000. You can just greet the day and do your thing, and you've got great energy. You don't need to sort of grope out of bed with your coffee. So that's what I'm talking about, getting every night to that point where you're feeling like amazing in the morning. I think if any of you are interested, or on Instagram, you can have a look. There's a guy called, I think he's called the Natural Lifestylist. And I think his name is Tony Riddle. He is amazing. And I think you can just check there, Carolyn's iPhone. I'm not sure who that is. You can just check if you can mute yourself there. Maybe I can mute you there. Okay. Yeah, so he's amazing to have a look at. He talks a lot about using standing desks, bouncing on a ball. So if you're in a job, or you're still at school, there's a lot of people here still at school, where you are going to spend hours and hours at a desk. It would really benefit you to look at getting like a yoga or physio ball, one of those balls. You can bounce a bit, you can sit a bit, you can stand a bit. Actually moving your computer nowadays with laptops, it's quite easy. I saw in one of his videos, he put the laptop on top of the fireplace and stood there. So you're moving your body in different positions, and that's very important for general health for your body in terms of structurally, but also important in terms of not being seated for that 6 hours plus per day. It sounds a lot when we sit here saying 6 hours plus, but here we all are sitting. And I mean, I could easily say I sit for more than 6 hours a day, just reading to my kids. And although I'm on my feet a lot, I easily think I do spend 6 hours a day seated. So that's something, these are things that you're not necessarily going to cure, but I think they're really good to be aware of, because they're good for overall health, but specifically good for sleep health as well. Okay, so that was that. Okay, then the next thing I wanted to talk about was circadian rhythms. So before I sort of got into the health thing, I didn't really know much about circadian rhythms. It sounded like something woo-woo. I was like, okay, cool, man. Circadian rhythms, stunning. And then I actually realized when I started to do some research on them, that circadian rhythms are stunning, but they really are a real thing too. And they're very powerful. So basically circadian rhythms means your body's biological clock, the time that your body says go to sleep and the time that it says wake up. And where you would feel that typically is where you feel really tired, your body's saying go to sleep, but you staying awake because you're watching a great series or reading a great book, or your body's saying sleep, sleep, don't wake up because you've had a late night, but you need to get up and go to work. So your body, it's those natural rhythms, those natural feelings of your body wanting to sleep and wake up. Animals have them, we have them. Obviously with animals you would see it go into the seasons when they hibernate and that type of thing, which is lovely as well. So it's your body's natural timekeeping clock. Your circadian rhythms affect your body, your brain, your hormones, and your sleep. There's a few ways of hacking, biohacking or health hacking your circadian rhythms, and here they are. So watching sunrises and sunsets. For those of you who've been to my classes before, you know I often talk about that. So we were quite lucky here on the Cape Peninsula. We have some people who are sunrise on our side, and then on the west side sunsets. It doesn't really matter. If you can get your sunsets in, try and get in 2 or 3 a week. They really help reset your circadian rhythm. So if you live somewhere where it sunrises, make sure you're up and actually watch it. Don't just be around when it's rising. Go somewhere and actually stand and watch the sun rise up off the horizon. It's really a beautiful thing, very powerful, and really good for your body and your brain. There's obviously there's two different types of light. I'm sure that a lot of you have heard about, obviously your screens, TVs and phones is blue light. And blue light is not good for the eyes, mainly because it tricks the brain into thinking the brightest light that we are exposed to in the very middle, hottest part of the day would be something close to blue light. So when you have a lot of blue light around you, especially at night, your body thinks that, I'm wide awake. It's the middle of the day. And so when I learned that, I started, and certainly with the energy-saving light bulbs that we use with computers, cell phones, movies, all that type of thing. I'm not saying don't do that. All I'm saying is be more aware of it. I've got one friend who, what they do is they've decided to, once a week, they turn the electricity off at the power box. Chink. So there is no electricity. Everything just goes off at 8 o'clock. And they have one night where they sit by the fire or sit by candles and they chat and they go to bed early. What we've done as a sort of compromise in our house is I turn off all the lights after supper, after we've washed up. Certainly in winter, that's lovely because you can have the fire going, you can have a couple of candles. I put my little girls to bed and then we'll sit. And even if the TV's on, I'm not having all the other light, the screens, no one's sitting on their phone. It's like if you want to watch a movie, you can watch for a bit and that's it. And then the screen's quite far away, but the rest of the light, and it's amazing to feel that darkness. And if you have a couple of candles or a fire somewhere, red light, so they say starlight, sunlight, and firelight are the 3 types of light that your eye should naturally see. And if you think of when you go camping, how amazing you feel. I mean, typically you'll go camping and it's like, lots of fresh air and exercise, so you go to sleep early. But it's also because certainly if you go to campsites where there's no electricity, we love that. Everyone's just exhausted by 8 o'clock. You're like man down by 9, even the adults are in bed, And actually a lot of that is just that you got up early when the sun rose because you're in a tent and you let the light in. And then at night you're not sitting with all these lights on that are tricking your brain into thinking that it's the middle of the day. In the Mayo Clinics, one of the Mayo Clinic studies, what they found, which I also thought was quite interesting, is that a very dark room and a cooler room, a colder room is much better to fall asleep in. So when I was speaking to one of the international athletes about their sleeping pattern, their real sleep gurus, she was saying for her particularly, she's a very slim, obviously very athletic person. She gets cold very easily and she does live in a house that is very cold. So she has to make sure her body's warm enough, but loves the cold room. So I thought that was really interesting. So, obviously in winter, if you I know that when my babies were smaller, I would often have the heaters on and that type of thing. Whereas now I would actually look back at that on that and say, you know, possibly having the room colder and unheated, but using more layers of clothing to keep warm is actually probably is now what I've moved towards after doing that sort of research and thinking, wow, that actually really does feel a lot better because you can regulate your temperature better. Because anyone knows that if you're too hot or if you're too cold, you actually are not going to fall asleep easily. So temperature is very relevant. And obviously light, there are certain of us who are more photosensitive. So if you know that you could consider putting blackout lining on your curtains or shutters on the door. It's not always easy, but light definitely does affect us. So if you are somebody who struggles with sleep, or if you've got kids who are struggling to sleep, considering your light, what they call light pollution, the light that's coming into your bedroom from outside, and whether that's because even though you think it may not be affecting you, it actually may be affecting the amount of melatonin that your brain's making and your ability to fall asleep. Obviously, coffee and alcohol are both things that can affect your sleep patterns. I know for myself personally that I can't have coffee after 2 o'clock. Coffee typically stays elevated in your bloodstream for 6 to 8 hours. So it is something to be aware of, that if your 8 hours is you want to be in bed at 9 o'clock, you must have your last coffee at like 1 o'clock or whatever, lunchtime. So I have my 2 o'clock cutoff, and I know on the days when I've had a coffee later in the day or green tea or something like that, it just does affect me and I struggle. And I think for those who are kind of going towards a more healthy lifestyle, as your systems become more sensitive and cleaner, you actually might find that those sensitivities will become greater because you can almost become more in tune with your body. Obviously alcohol does affect your sleep waves. So you'll often find, I know that I used to often have a couple of glasses of red wine, and I was doing that primarily so that I would fall asleep, because when I was younger, I struggled so much to sleep. But what would happen is 3 hours later, I would fall asleep easily, but then 3 hours later, I would wake up and then I would struggle to fall asleep again. So we'll talk just now about the essential oils. The essential oils are amazing and really are a great alternative. So if you have your glass of wine with supper or whatever, it's not there. You're not using it as a blunt instrument to go to sleep, which creates other problems down the road. I love having a glass of wine, so I'm certainly not saying don't have it, but just to be aware that don't use it for those purposes. Yeah, obviously exercise is relevant. I think most people who on this talk are pretty good with exercise, but your exercise regulates your melatonin levels. Your melatonin is basically a hormone that regulates your sleep and awake cycle. So it regulates your circadian rhythms. So the more you exercise, the more melatonin you produce, which is great. I know that definitely the last 2 days that we've had in Cape Town have been so stormy that I basically got out for one little walk around the block, and I was really grumpy. Last night, I think I went to bed only after 11, which is very bizarre for me. But it was just, I think I can only say it was lack of sleep, lack of exercise. So one of the studies that I read up on was saying that exercise will halve the amount of time that it takes to fall asleep. So obviously each of these studies are done as a control with one specific thing, but they all are relevant. So if you add in a little bit of all of them, they can really help your sleep patterns. The last one that I wanted to mention was one that's really been amazing for me, and it's actually two things. It's doing body scans and using breathing techniques / mindfulness to help you as you're falling asleep. So the body scans, that was something that a friend of mine who's a yoga teacher taught me. And you basically, what she does is she tenses up her body as she lies there. She gets into bed and she gets into a sort of comfortable position, getting her pillows so that her shoulders are, her neck is well supported. So and the pillows are under her neck and she lies on her back, and then she'll tense up her body as tense as she can. and then start to release it from her feet all the way up to the crown of her neck, feeling, watch the different things that she's feeling, and just thinking, I'm feeling my feet relax, I feel them, I feel the bed, I feel my calves on the cold sheets, I feel my thighs are getting weaker, getting heavier. There's a lovely video, if any of you remind me on the WhatsApp group later, I can try and find it. If you've got kids, this is such a cute little video. It's an animated video of a little guy lying there, and then it's almost like a little meditation app where he says, you close your eyes now, you're getting sleepy, and then they can see in the video, so the middle of his body is like a little circuit. It looks like a little electrical circuit. And like almost like it's little light bulbs, and then it says your feet are going to sleep now, and the lights go off, and then he says your knees are getting sleepy now, and then his little knee lights go off. I thought it was such a sweet visual to actually teach small children to learn that thing of, okay, even if you're sitting in the bed with them, you can say, okay, your feet are going to sleep now, and your knees are going to sleep now, and they're turning off, they're going to sleep, because your muscles, your bones, all the things in your body need to turn off and go to sleep. And as for adults, understand that, but if you've got small kids, it's such a lovely little movie. So if any of you want that, you can let me know. So that was the body scans. With the breathing and mindfulness, that the mindfulness essentially means that as you close your eyes, you are becoming aware of your senses. So it's what you can hear, what you can smell, what you can feel. Primarily those would be the ones. So for me, this is amazing. So I will lie there and I'll close my eyes and I'll think, I can hear my diffuser going, I can hear the people next door taking in their furniture, I can hear the sheets moving, but you really need to actually concentrate, I can feel the cold sheets against my body getting warmer, I can feel it's dark, it's cozy, so you kind of go through that, and that really is amazing. And actually there's a guy who I've been listening to a lot lately. I think he wrote a book called Just Breathe, and he was saying, when you do these kind of things where you actually concentrate on something, like let's say your senses, what you can see, what you can hear, you can even do this during the day if you want to try and relax, or you're feeling very stressed or scattered in your thoughts, because he calls it a brain cleanse, like a mini brain reboot, because basically you're stopping all the crazy thoughts from going on in your head that are there. They like open loops. Dan Brown has written that amazing book, Getting Things Done. And he talks about our thoughts being open loops. We've got millions of open loops in our head. And we actually need to just sometimes stop the loops. And by stopping those, I find, there's lots of techniques out there, but for me personally, it's really simple, really easy. You can do it with your kids. It's just, close your eyes, what can you hear, what can you feel, what can you smell, just to settle the mind. And often after that, and then if that hasn't worked, then I'll think through, my feet are going to sleep, that thing, and then I fall asleep easily. And I'm someone who struggled for years with sleep. So give those a try. Essentially what you want is your parasympathetic nervous system to be activated. So that's basically responsible for your body's rest and digestion, specifically when your body's relaxed or resting. And you want this is like what actually the parasympathetic nervous system does. It undoes the work of the sympathetic nervous system, which is all your stress and anxiety during the day. So when I do massages, I've told some of you this before, when I do massages, I'll often you get into about a second or third essential oil, and you'll see that deep sigh that someone will do. And it means they've geared down, they've powered down, and they've now accessed into deep rest. I can see it when I do it to my kids, it's amazing. And then I see their whole body relax straight away. Let's have some water. You know, obviously in our bodies, we've got lots of cortisol, which is your fight, flight. That was created so that when we were living in situations where you needed to fight the enemy or fight off the animal, your body was saying, create lots of adrenaline, make lots of, stay awake, don't go to sleep, there's danger, you need to protect yourself, you need to protect your family. And unfortunately, in the world that we live in, with the amount of input that we have coming towards us, with the speed of our society and what's required of us, basically what happens is that we live in a cortisol-induced reality. And what we're trying to do is increase our serotonin and to actually reduce the effects of that cortisol. And certainly what happens is often we have so much cortisol during the day because we're so stressed, whether that's schoolwork or stressed about friendships or stressed about how much you need to get done, or where you feel overwhelmed, or you're stressed about your own brain and your own thoughts. And then when you finally get to lie down, then it's all starts coming out. And that's where you want to stop it and just say, no, just concentrate now. What do you think? What do you hear? What do you smell? And that really helps you go into that parasympathetic state. Okay, so here's the exciting stuff. The easy stuff to do is to use essential oils. Obviously, you can use them in a diffuser. That's lovely to have in your bedroom. I have now, after 3 years, got to a point where each person has a diffuser in our room, and then we've got one in the lounge. It's taken me that long to collect them because they are expensive, but it's so amazing to have a diffuser on in the evening, and really has been such life-changing for myself and especially my husband. I mean, I'm blown away by how much he loves his sleep oils. So diffusing essential oils. If you don't have a diffuser, another option is another friend of mine who taught me a lot about what I know from essential oils. She said she used to, back in the day, fill up a spray bottle with water and a little bit of, you can use surgical spirits or vodka, and then put 20 drops of serenity or lavender or something like that in there, and she used to spray her sheets. I think some of you may remember, like Granny used to do that type of thing. There are some oils that we can use internally which are very good for sleep. And then I love making a sleep roller, which is like a little roller ball, which I roll on my temples. I'll roll it in the middle of my head. You can roll it up and down the back of your neck, and you can also put it on your feet. And that's what my husband loves the most. If his sleep roller runs out, he's not happy. Okay, so I'm going to give you some ideas of which oils to use. So the main oil that doTERRA makes for sleep is Serenity, and that is actually a mixture of lavender, cedarwood, hoewood, lang-lang, majoram, Roman chamomile, vetiver, vanilla, and sandalwood. It's such a beautiful mix. It is an expensive oil. I think it's in the region of about 600 Rand a bottle, but that's a big 15 ml bottle. And I have a few in stock, so I can put some on the group later if any of you want to get one of those. Yeah, so that really is, you know, lavender is amazing for sleep. In fact, when they've done studies with women in midlife, in their sort of midlife age range, saying that when they used lavender oil, their sleep quality increased. And they specifically did a study with 60 nurses who had fluctuating work schedules. So they could never get into a proper rhythm with their sleep, and they used lavender oil to help them to access their sleep, and their sleep ability to fall asleep and sleep deeply improved so much with the lavender oil. So I thought that was nice to know. And lavender is in Serenity as well. So here's some options. You can either put Serenity into your diffuser, and in a smallish bedroom, I would use 1 or 2 drops. If there's a small child in the room, I would use 1 drop. If it's like for myself and my husband, I will use 2 drops probably in a bedroom. In the diffuser. And then another nice option, and it's good to change up your oils, because obviously with anything you want to have lots of different experiences for your body to not get used to the same thing all the time. Another lovely sleep mix is Breathe mixed with lavender. So Breathe is very nice because it opens up the airways. It's very good for allergies. So in fact, what I do with my kids is I will take an empty bottle and I put Serenity and I put a bit of lavender and I put Breathe in there. Certainly with my boys who've got a little bit more allergic, they get that in their bottles, which they put 2 drops of that mixture into their diffuser every night. But Breathe and lavender together are good. Serenity is very good in the diffuser. Another one that's a really good secret weapon is Copaiba under the tongue. So if you are younger, 1 drop. But if you're an adult, you can take 2 drops under the tongue. It's a very strong anti-inflammatory. It's very relaxing, full of cannabinoids. It attaches to the same cannabinoid receptors that CBD oil does. So it makes you very relaxed. It's very good for anxiety, for anxious thought patterns. So I've been using that, and it's very good for your overall health and your immune system as well. So it really doesn't have any side effects, doesn't make you feel drowsy or anything, but is really calming. In fact, I spoke to a mom this week whose daughter had a loose tooth, and she had run out of frankincense, because frankincense is very good if you've got sores in your mouth or anything like that. And so she took Copaiba as a replacement and rubbed just like a half a drop from the top of the bottle on her tooth, and then said that night we had that crazy storm and her daughter didn't wake up, and she's quite a sensitive sleeper, and she said she couldn't believe it, the Copaiba just knocked her out. So Copaiba is a great one. If you've got like a small baby, you can just put like a tiny drop on the end of your finger and just rub the inside of their cheek, or you can add it to the diffuser. Diffuser is a really good, easy, safe way to use oils around small children. Okay, we spoke about spraying the sheets. Okay, sleep roller. If you want to make your own sleep roller, what you're going to do is you're going to buy a roller bottle from somewhere like Terra Mamas or Oil Collective or Oil Supply ZA is the other place. And you're going to fill it up with a carrier oil. You can use sweet almond oil, fractionated coconut oil. You could use olive oil, anything like that. And then you're going to put into that bottle, if it's a 10 ml bottle, which is the normal sort of average size that you get, you're going to put about 20 drops of oil. So I love this mix. This is my secret mix. I do about 10 drops of Serenity, because Serenity is the actual sleep mix. It's the oil of tranquility. And then I use wild orange. I'll talk about wild orange just now. And then I would use 10 Serenity, probably 5 wild orange. And then I use vetiver and frankincense, but vetiver is not available in South Africa. And there is vetiver in Serenity. So you could, if you've got the top 10 kit, you could just put in 5 drops of frankincense. And that roller would last you, if you were using it every night, probably a month, maybe more. It's a really great way to just apply. So you can apply to your wrists, you can apply to the insides of your elbows or your elbow creases. You could do the back of your neck. My husband always loves to do his temple, and then he does a line across his forehead. And that's also a lovely thing to do if you don't have a diffuser in your bedroom. Wild orange, actually, there was, in 2002, there was a medical trial done with wild orange oil where they said wild orange increased sleep and decreased anxiety. So it's funny that everybody's been loving wild orange at the moment. And I think almost like as a sort of a general intuitive need for that sort of less anxious thoughts, etc. People have been very drawn to wild orange. Lots of people have been asking me for wild orange. The other one that you can reach for if you have it, and it's a good one to think about if you are a teen or you have a heavy workload, there's a mix of oils that doTERRA makes. It's called In Tune, and In Tune is specifically for kids who struggle with concentration, and adults as well. It's specifically good for calming the mind. So In Tune is a nice one to add into, if you're ordering your own oils, to add it to your list, to order at some point. So this is specifically good if you're having to work at night. So if you're in a situation where you've got a lot of work, you're getting your work done, but then you know you've got to go to sleep afterwards and you can't calm your mind, to quieten the mind, In Tune is one that really helps to also just do temples, head, wrists, that type of thing. Yeah, obviously, you know, speaking about quieting the mind, that one thing I have also realized that was just a sort of a natural sort of tip was that my husband loves to get into bed at night and process by talking about stuff that he needs to get off his chest. And if I talk about something like that's exciting to my brain, or a problem that I've got to solve, like he'll say, you know, we need to take the car in tomorrow and it's got to be fixed, and do you think this, and I've got to now answer questions and think. I'm basically activating my brain. So he's learned now, I've said to him, you know, if we have that type of conversation, he feels awesome, and 2 seconds later he's asleep, and then I lie there for 2 hours wide awake. So I think being aware of that, if you are sensitive to sleeping, falling asleep easily, etc., that is, do not fall into that trap of having a loaded conversation or talking about work or trying to solve a problem, anything that, preferably not for an hour or two before you even go to sleep, because it basically wakes up and excites the brain. You want your brain to be as calm and as relaxed as possible. In fact, the guy who I mentioned earlier, I think his name's Tony Riddle, I've been loving his Instagram, just working through it. And they have a thing where the whole family goes to bed at 9 o'clock, and he gets up at 5 in the morning, and he does his barefoot running, and he's a health coach, and he's so awesome. But I kind of love that, you know, like just actually, and maybe for a season, trying to go to sleep earlier, having a more predictable routine of having a time to go to sleep and having a time to wake up, and making that something that's just more of a priority if you are struggling with sleep, or if you know somebody who's struggling with sleep. There are lots of those ideas that are free. Basically, the tenets of health are free. Sleep is really important. I mean, if somebody comes to me and they have an illness, the first thing I will say to them is, are you sleeping properly? And are you drinking enough water? Because, you know, obviously sleep, it relates to light exposure, it relates to exercise, getting outdoors, getting some fresh air, etc. But activating that parasympathetic nervous system, we can assist it massively with the essential oils. It's like a big biohack. But I think all of the other things are relevant as well. And if you can do a little bit of all of those things, you will have great success, you know.